Dorohedoro is an acid-induced joyride in a supersonic killdozer that's painted in gore, screaming through an outlandish world populated by eccentric yet lovable characters, while keeping the wherewithal for a few pit stops of black comedy and quirky wholesomeness. This actual gem of a series is one of the most delightful and captivating experiences I've ever had reading a manga. While not a series for the faint of heart, taking the plunge into this dark, far-out seinen series will either hook you immediately or spit you back out. This video may most likely contain mild visual spoilers. Dorohedoro began serialization in monthly Ikki, starting on November 30th in the year 2000. 14 years later, on September 25th, publication ceased. So then the series was passed on to Hibana from March 6, 2015, to that magazine's end of publication on August 7, 2017. Finally, the series transferred over to Monthly Shonen Sunday until Dorohedoro published its final chapter on September 12, 2018. Dorohedoro was created by a mangaka called Q Hayashida. Q Hayashida's first major work was Maken X Another from the year 2000. A spin-off manga derived from the 1999 Sega Dreamcast game called Maken X, a first-person hack-and-slash developed by Atlus. She has also done some cover variants for some select Marvel Comics series. Not much is known about her, as her actual name is unknown, and no photos of her exist on the internet. We do know from an online interview from 2006 that she works alone and is a die-hard fan of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms series, once playing Dynasty Warriors so much that her PS2 died from exhaustion. Her latest series is called Die Dark, which began running in April of 2019 in Monthly Shonen Sunday. Dorohedoro takes place in a decrepit and deteriorating realm aptly called Hole, which resembles a dense and mostly run-down city of rusted metal and crumbled concrete. Hole is home to the human characters of this series, where they are frequently visited by masked sorcerers from another dimension, who view the humans as fair game for magic target practice. This constant invasive threat has rendered the Hole all but totally subjugated, leaving the majority of the defenseless population disfigured and in poverty. Despite this, just enough order exists for the foundations of society to barely stand. There's even a festival hosted by local monks that takes place once a year, centered around the night when the magic-polluted soil causes all the buried corpses in the Hole to rise from the dead, and then must be put back, fittingly called the Night of the Living Dead. Another side effect of magic pollution in the Hole is the rain that has become an allergen to the sorcerers themselves. Sorcerers hail from a realm colloquially known as the Sorcerer's World, a strange and beautiful land of magic, culture, and overall extravagance, a stark counterpart to the Hole's condition and the poor inhabitants. While far from the utopia itself, the Sorcerer's World is also home to many devils that originate from a third realm, Hell. Devils are worshipped as gods by even the most powerful and respected sorcerers, for they are nigh unkillable and all-powerful. Despite their imposing and unnerving presence, they bear a childlike drive for seeking pleasure and entertainment, usually through odd hobbies or treating the mortal realm as their personal ant farm. Sorcerers and devils are the only life forms capable of performing magic, which manifests as black smoke that applies an effect or ability unique to the user. Despite magic being an exceedingly potent power source, from resurrecting the dead to transmogrifying anything or anyone into a pie, entering combat with the reliable method of self-taught martial arts and physical brutality is preferred by a decent portion of the cast, for not every character is adept in magic abilities, if any. It also shouldn't be a surprise that magic can still be a very reliable method of inflicting terrifying and destructive effects on the human form. Regardless of the way fights are fought, they are never clean. Blood and guts are everywhere in Dorohedoro. Dorohedoro is primarily a horror manga first and foremost, not just for the classic horror film references and inspiration, but with the horrific, no-holds-barred portrayal of the obliteration of the human body in a myriad of methods. Q Hayashida also seems to adore drawing human skulls, and there is an abundance of occultish and satanic imagery in her artwork. It's not easy for a manga to generally scare its reader, but Q Hayashida is very skilled at spinning some unsettling moods and chilling moments in this series. Q Hayashida's greatest talent as an artist has to be her mastery at creating a living, breathing world that oozes with character and whimsy in both the artwork as well as the storytelling. She manages to pack so much personality and creativity into the lore and identity of Dorohedoro's universe in such a natural way to the point where it feels like a character all on its own. It might be a little overwhelming at first, especially with the cold opener of the series that tosses you directly into the fray with no lifeline. The main character of Dorohedoro is an enigmatic man called Kaiman, who woke up with a lizard's head and no memories, as well as an immunity to magic in all forms. He's accompanied by his best friend Nikaido, the owner of a hole-in-the-wall restaurant in the hole that serves Kaiman's favorite thing in the world, Oba Gyoza. Together they hunt for the unknown sorcerer who transformed Kaiman's face by utilizing the mysterious man who lives in a pocket dimension located inside Kaiman's jaws, where said mysterious man will declare whether the sorcerer they catch is the one or not. Kaiman is by nature a boisterous delinquent and somewhat of a lovable oaf, complemented by Nikaido's calm and cool demeanor, who seems to take it upon herself to assist Kaiman to figure out who or what his identity really is. Not to mention figure out why a ghost is living inside Kaiman's mouth, among many other mysteries ensnared in this frenetic story. Our rambunctious duo's sorcerer killing sprees eventually catch the attention of N, a sorcerer kingpin who holds arguably the most power and influence in the sorcerer's world, as well as a strong affinity for mushrooms. N dispatches his pair of elite personal enforcers, the hulking bruiser Noi and the hammer-wielding Shin, to clean up this mess, as N suspects the two may have a tie with the Cross Eyes, identifiable by their uniform eye tattoos, the very same that Kaiman somehow bears. The Cross Eyes are an underground rebel organization consisting of sorcerers born incapable of naturally producing a usable amount of the magic smoke that applies whatever unique effect or ability each sorcerer possesses. They deal in a magic-enhancing drug of unknown origin, known as black powder, and pledge allegiance to an ominous figure simply known as the Boss. The Boss is rarely seen except by his inner circle of elite Cross-Eye enforcers, unofficially led by the literally venomous Dokuga. Throughout the tumultuous story, we follow these three major factions as they hunt, fight, and sometimes even befriend each other. Not to mention the devils who occasionally appear to help or hinder a situation, and a cascading avalanche of events that never fails to shock and confound you as you follow these characters' twisted paths paved with an ever-abundant body count. But no matter how brutal or eccentric this journey gets, there are plenty of genuinely funny and heartfelt moments as well. This is mostly thanks to the characters who take center stage in this series. The cast of characters in Dorohedoro is one of my favorites of any series. It's a lively, albeit borderline psychotic collection of personalities that are the main instruments for the outlandish charisma the series is known for. Human, sorcerer, devil, and giant cockroach alike. Even characters initially introduced as antagonists are extremely likable and are by no means evil, simply acting on their own personal accord and volition. While there are only a couple major characters who come to mind who could be labeled actually evil, just about every character is capable of providing some sort of twisted levity to the series like a candle flame in the darkness. The bonus chapters at the end of each volume shifting the focus to an almost slice-of-life pace and tone to act as a chaser to the mayhem of the main story. Q Hayashida is as generous as she is cruel to her characters. Nobody makes it out of this series unfulfilled or unscathed. Nobody feels forgotten or wasted in the story either. Seemingly tertiary characters and minor events have their own tie to the crux of the story. The chaotic spiderweb of strands that the characters weave with each other is an incredibly entertaining endeavor, providing some great character moments and interactions that surprise and delight to great heights. Truly touching moments and fulfilling character arcs are a guarantee. Despite how much I can gush about my adoration for this series, I can admit Dorohedoro isn't for everybody. It does feature charming characters and an engaging story, but not everybody can handle the extreme gore, the gratuitous nudity, the bleak setting, or commit to the eldritch premise. It's a bizarre, out-there series that doesn't hold your hand or give you an outsider's point of view to the alien world where extraordinary things can be commonplace for the inhabitants. Dorohedoro is a brash and bloody series that takes pride in being unapologetically, horrifically unique. The amnesiac protagonist plotline might be considered a somewhat shallow and unoriginal trope to some, but without giving any twists or revelations away, suffice to say it ends up being anything but. There is a point where the story becomes a bit more focused and on track as more factors and bigger stakes come into play, or you could argue there is more downtime in the earlier chapters. Q Hayashida's art does improve over time in a noticeable way, but it's never uninteresting to look at any stage, although not everyone will appreciate the scrappy and grungy art style. I personally cannot get enough of it. Character designs emit the punk and horror tones splattered throughout the pages, the labyrinthian concrete jungles and surreal dreamscapes overflowing with grimy detail. The colors in some of the early volumes look gorgeous as well. In the past, Q Hayashida had been told by her editors to be sure to be able to wrap up the story at any point in case the current magazine would be forced to cease publishing. I believe that this has resulted, to some degree, to have been a beneficial factor to the overall progression of the story, each subsequent arc swelling with intensity fit for a climax, yet it just keeps going. I found the actual finale of Dorohedoro to be triumphant, and did not fail to deliver an incredible endgame that ends feeling satisfyingly complete. There might be a couple minor questions unanswered, but nothing substantial has come to mind after reading the entirety of the series at least twice. I actually believe the series overall does a very good job of smartly utilizing its characters and world building to an abounding extent, and managed to feel tight by the end of it all. In my opinion, the pros outweigh the cons by a mammoth margin. To put it plainly, this manga is worth your time, and I implore you to check it out if you have even an inkling of an interest. There's none like it. The entire series has an official US release with 23 tankobon volumes published by Viz Media as part of their Viz Signature series. The English editions keep the same dimensions and wraparound cover style that the original Japanese release had, but they lack the textured print on the front cover. The covers are designed and literally handcrafted by Q Hayashida herself. On the top of my head, I can't think of another mangaka who does this. Each of them contain about 6 chapters, along with an extra evil chapter at the end, which are mostly one-offs that expand the world, explore characters, and most of all acts as a dessert, a moment of respite at the end of the violent mania that is contained in each volume. At a certain point, the volumes become thicker with each consecutive release, especially with the last few. Something worth noting is that the official English translation of this series is not a flawless one, but it is still totally readable. At its worst, there are times when the main point of a scene is made unnecessarily obtuse, but it's mostly minor discrepancies. One of the more noticeable translation mistakes is the occasional flip-flopping of pronouns for the characters Fukuyama and Kirien, who are both initially introduced and referred to as the opposite gender. I understand that no series that is translated from one language and culture to another will never not have irregularities, but it's worth noting if you decide to commit to owning the official release. It just seems apparent that multiple people were tasked translating this series without much context or foresight, but still not enough to be a deal breaker for the enjoyment of this series in my opinion. My biggest gripe with the English release is regarding how the colored pages were handled. The colored art is always a highlight while reading the series and looks fantastic, injecting vibrancy and energy into the artwork. Here's the issue I have with this. Volumes 1 through 3 print these special pages in their original color, while volumes 4 through 23 print them in black and white. It's kind of a strange choice to start by keeping the integrity of these colored pages intact for just the first few volumes and then just stop. The black and white printed colored pages look a bit too dark, and a lot of the details get muddied or hidden as a result of this, downplaying the moments where the extra layer of effort would have originally heightened it. It was a bummer to see big story moments undermined by this decision, most likely to cut down on printing costs, but why stop after initially committing? This isn't a deal breaker by any means, just a disappointing and sort of bizarre decision. There are also general translation notes at the end of each volume, but, like the colored pages, this is a luxury that will be eventually taken away after Volume 3. Again, not a fault of the series, but a minor disappointment in regards to the official release. So despite some arguably nitpicky shortcomings this release has, it's still more than passable overall. I recommend the physical release as both a greatly enjoyable dark seinen manga series, but also as cool art books. Flipping through and absorbing the filthy little details in Q Hayashida's characters and backgrounds is a worthwhile activity I'd find myself doing rather frequently, which, to me, is arguably just about as enjoyable as reading the series normally. Better yet, if you really like the art of Dorohedoro, there is a dedicated art book for said manga series available in Japan. This is Mud and Sludge, and it contains all the colored artwork from the entire series in all its glory, as well as character models, cover art, etc., etc. Yes, finally, the colored pages that were muddied up are now restored to their original vibrant majesty. I recommend this to more dedicated fans of the series. Dorohedoro also has an anime adaptation exclusively on Netflix, currently with one season containing 12 episodes as well as a single OVA episode, covering roughly the first 6 or 7 volumes. It's really nice for this to exist, especially for the fact that it's a good adaptation that has surely garnered more attention to the series because of it, launching just in time for the 20th anniversary of the series. Of course, I must acknowledge the use of 3D animation. It's done remarkably well to the point where in certain shots I didn't even notice the use of 3D, which is the bullseye animation studios aim for. As far as differences between the manga and anime go, there are a few chapters and some scenes missing, but the information learned in those cutscenes are reinserted without breaking the flow. Some of these have been cleverly adapted into the OVA, consisting of several of the extra evil chapters. Nevertheless, it captures the tone and energy of the manga and puts it into the world of animation pretty darn well. As of right now, there is no second season announced, but it seems likely that Dorohedoro will return in anime form. I don't think it would be amiss to say that Dorohedoro is one of my personal favorite manga series of all time. All in all, it's a unique and beautifully drawn story that manages to seamlessly blend horror, action, mystery, and humor into a thick, sludge-like mixture that goes down like soda pop and may induce a psychedelic and euphoric state. Pick up this one-of-a-kind series and it'll surely capture your heart.